Hi, everybody, and welcome to TNM Coaching Unplugged, the Zone to Reach Interconnected podcast. We're so grateful and happy to have you listen to us this week. And as always, we are elevating our hearts, our minds, and our souls to the next level and beyond through these beautiful and exciting conversations that we have week by week. So today, I have a very good colleague, friend, partner in crime, always fantastic people who come to these podcasts. And today we're going to have a very interesting conversation about transparency. What does it mean to become a transparent company? Why is transparency so important in the world right now? How can we achieve more transparency? And what are the benefits for you on a personal level? What are the benefits on an organizational level? And what are the benefits for your business? So if you are in the business of fashion, for example, this will be very interesting to you because we're going to focus a little bit on fashion industry. And also, if you're in any business, I think this is a moment when you can listen in and prepare yourself for the future that is emerging, that is extremely dynamic, and it requires and needs transparency more than ever. So now I'm going to practice Neliana's surname. Neliana Fuenmayor, it's the awarded designer. She's an entrepreneur. She's also an innovator. And she deeply cares for transparency, especially within the fashion industry. And the reason why she, cares about transparency within the fashion industry is because she was studying arts in London, where she has the BA in fashion design. And then she went to master entrepreneurship and innovation. And she has more than 15 years of experience in working with brands, startups, NGOs, and other organizations with a deep commitment to her mission. And her mission is empowering fashion community to set up active citizens powered by digital tools to demand transparency to create positive impact for our planet as well. She's also founder and CEO of Transparent Company that works in coaching, consultancy with the business. She's also an expert in sustainable innovation, in technologies, and she's offering solutions to accelerate positive impact in fashion industry. She also has a wonderful education in coaching, so she's also a coach, consultant. She understands human nature. So she's a full-on package, as we say, when it comes to the people who we introduce to this podcast. So, Neliana, welcome. Glad to have you today.
Thank you so much, Zoran and TNM, for having me here today with you. I'm super excited.
Yes. So let's kind of dive into that straight on. I have a few questions I prepared for you. And the first one that I would love to discuss is, why is transparency the foundation of creating the brand trust and customer loyalty? In your opinion, what is that about?
For me, transparency is about the initial exchange we have, no matter what it is, whether it's between two people, two organizations, even two countries, that you need to build trust. So trust is the foundation in which we can build anything, relationships, commitments, agreements. So transparency is that level of trust that we all need in order to create something with a strong foundation. And for me, it's humans. We're always thriving when we feel safe, and transparency provides that.
There is a trust that we really need to create with ourselves and with our businesses and brands. There is a safety, right, that we need to feel safe and included in order for brands to become more believable. So in your opinion, that trust is the foundation of creating the brand trust? Because the reason why I'm asking this question is that a lot of people, a lot of organizations are struggling with the brand trust right now. The social proofing and people really knowing that I can trust this brand beyond what they market, beyond what they say on the social media, beyond how they want to be seen. It's not really there. So, it's an important element, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. So brands are looking to different strategies and ways to engage with their customer. And I speak a lot about how we are going to move from customers or consumers and change the C for the C of citizens. So how we are also in the shoes of citizens of the world, of our countries and of our communities, demanding for that transparency so that we can make informed decisions about what we are voting for. Essentially, we're voting every time that we buy into a brand, a product, a service, And that information the brands disclose mainly in their websites or in the product packaging, it's how we can rely on how transparent they are and how we're building the bridge of trust. But if that information is not there, if that information is not verifiable, and as we mentioned in the Instagram Live, what is greenwashing? A lot of brands, unfortunately, had to rush to communicate sustainability, but what has happened is that it has ended up in greenwashing, which means too much of the good stuff that they do without any backup or verifiable information. So that unfortunately falls into the greenwashing category, which also unfortunately allows brands to say, I'd rather not communicate anything because I don't want to be told that I've been greenwashing, even though they might do great stuff. So we're in a very interesting space right now where also new legislations or regulations are coming into place, especially here in Europe, as for products to communicate this. The brands are looking for solutions in the best way to make this verifiable and credible.
So we'll talk about what the businesses can do a bit later in this recording. What I would love to ask you right now, just for people who are listening to this, they're awakened in the how transparency is important, but also for people who are still learning about it.
Mm-hmm.
What do people really care about? When you say that people demand transparency, they want to become active, conscious citizens, and I was to be a business owner or I was to work in a corporation when I'm in charge with sustainability and transparency, what would you say people want to know?
You touched on a very important point, is what do you care about? And we all care about different things. And that's the first question I always ask my clients, because every brand has a different mission, a different origin, a different aim and goals. So what do you really care about? So it comes from both perspectives. From the perspective of the founder of the company, of the brand, what do they want to communicate through their brand, through their branding, their values and beliefs, and how they're going to leave a legacy in the world? And also, how is the company culture communicating this, and how is this going to be, branch out within the teams, and how every employee is going to embody that. So some brands care about animal rights. So for example, they don't use leather, and so they don't do animal testing in products. So they can use the certification of animal cruelty free, for example. And so as a consumer, you will be more inclined to look for that logo in products if you're also part of that pool of people who really care about animals. So that what you care about, it ripples through the whole network of people who are part of this movement. In this case, it can be forests, it can be human rights, it can be anything and of course we want all of those things to be perfectly aligned and live in a perfect world. But we can't do everything alone, and we can't do everything either. So we need to be very honest with ourselves. What do I really care about? And that's what I'm going to focus. And that's the first thing I'm going to do as good as possible.
I love that. I love that you're introducing that we cannot do everything, because what I'm seeing with the people nowadays, there's a huge raise in consciousness when it comes to who are we as a consumers of the brands. And we deeply care about the health and vitality of this planet. And as you said, the planet includes animals, the oceans, forests, air, sustainability of production, our resources. And we can see this more and more and more, that the younger generation specifically, they demand, from the brands to show care. And what you're saying beautifully, that we can get overwhelmed with all of that. And it's important for a brand to choose what they really want to subscribe to, and what is that one thing that they really do well. Is that how it should? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And of course, supply chains are extremely complex, and a brand can use so many type of materials that come from different sources, natural and non-natural. So it's complex. It's a very complex conversation, but it's important to start from one commitment, one issue that the brand wants to solve. And it's usually the founders that are the drivers of this change. And some of them sometimes didn't have this from the start, but now as the world is changing and it's all over the media, and we're experiencing as well the effects of climate change, it's impossible to ignore it.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's so important, because it's impossible to ignore. It's super relevant in our society right now, and people are getting wiser and wiser and more tuned into what really matters. Because, if you produce something somewhere, but we are not really, transparent and open how and what materials did we use, especially in the fashion industry, then most likely some of the consumer will not even buy because they don't resonate with that value. And I think you brought something really important, that each and every brand needs to have a specific value that penetrates through the teams, through the customers, through the company culture, in order for them to really be able to attract people they share the same value, right?
Yeah, especially as you said with the young generations. There's this talks about how young people are not keeping their jobs. They move very quickly from one job to the next, whereas before it used to be like, oh, I spent 20 years in one company. That was normal. Now the new normal is that young people are thriving through having different experiences in companies, and that's a struggle for a company to retain that talent. And so if Generation Z is actually caring, about a better future, and they're looking for those companies that match their values and their vision for the future, then these companies that have been long in the market, how can they actually step up and offer that from a very genuine place, not from let's just make it. And that's also transparency, like let's be authentic here and offer this new generation who are looking for being part of a change, a place in the market, a place where they feel impact.
And I love that, impact. When they feel impact, I love what you're saying. Let's be authentic. I think that's a very important thing for the brands, because sometimes we can subscribe to a specific trend in the industry, in the market, right? And we just ride the way of the trend, and we just want to show up that we are so trendy, we are following it, but then we lose that genuine authenticity. And this is not a trend, from your opinion. Is that something that is going to stay?
Yes. There are trends that are going and coming within the same circle, but I believe that what's the essence of Gen Z is that they feel that if it's not them, who and when, if it's not now. So yeah, I feel also the internet changing has shaped so many things, and as we can see, AI as well. Lots of people are worried about how they're going to retain their jobs and whatnot, and I feel like a lot of the movement that is happening is going back to what we can, let's say, control, which is what we can do with our hands, what we can give back and feel. So obviously we have things like the metaverse. So the world is changing in very interesting ways. But I feel like what's important is that no matter which one you subscribe to, we're all very clear about our values and what we care about, and take that as the vehicle to move forward to design that very future that we want. And I think also collectively things are becoming, you can't hide the sun with your finger anymore. Like, it is happening. There is collective movements that are shaping and shaking the new ways of working, the new ways of living, and there's more demand for fairness in general. And I feel like part of that is demanding for information and demanding that transparency that we all need for all the products and services that we're subscribing to.
I love it. And I think that this is one of the most important transitions that we have as a humanity, the transparency, because I think the lie and deception and hiding things, not only lying, yes, certain things are not done with intention, but, we, in the old times, we always had this saying, this is business, right? So when we say we're doing it as a business, then everything goes, because we focus on profit and we focus on money. And then even if you know this is not really done properly, or the source is not reliable, or this is not sustainable, we just justify it. This is just business, right? And we're moving from that. It's just business to something else.
Yes, I remember when I was in university reading about the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. Or people, profit, it was first, people and planet. And it seemed like a very like utopic idea. And now that planet is what? It's the source of making everything. It's taking a different place in the agenda. And I'm glad to see that. It's just that we also need to be vigilant on how that's being used by organizations that are profiting as well from this awakening of the planet ecosystem and the boundaries. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects that unfortunately we all need to keep an eye on. Without being overwhelmed and with knowing that we can impact from our communities. I love speaking about localism, like how can we be local and still be part of a global impact. So yeah, it's people ask me, why you talk so much about transparency? Why transparency? Why do you care about transparency? And I care about it because I was entering as a fashion designer student into the world of materials and understanding more where they were coming from and how were they made. And I understood that there was a huge divide between animal welfare environment and people. And I'm like, why do we have to create these silos? Everything is connected. Everything is part of the Earth's ecosystem. So for me, transparency connects all of these environment, social, and or governmental organizations. So yeah, for me, transparency is like the connector of all of this.
And my question, when you say why, people ask you, why do you care? Why do you care? From the business point of view, absolutely, it's clear. On a personal level, what got you to the level of passion when it comes to transparency?
Yeah, that's also a very interesting question I've been asked lately. So I'm from Venezuela originally, and I left when I was 19 to pursue my dreams, and I moved to London to study fashion. And I left with a bittersweet feeling because at that time my country was trying to get out of this government that was not delivering the promises. And a lot of the liberties and freedoms we had were slowly but surely, steadily being taken away from us, to the point that voting doesn't mean anything, and it's the only thing we have left. So, yeah, through the years, somehow I started connecting the dots. And when I did my TED Talk that you were coaching us, the speakers, it was the moment where I realized that it was important for me to tell this part of the story, because this is how I felt that I could have an impact in my industry that I've chosen, which was fashion design, versus coming from a country that, yeah, I could have stayed and do something there, but I also had to follow my own dreams and purpose in life. So in a way, that has been a big driver for me to create impact in an industry that I've chosen to be part of, that I've seen that is very complex, that is very opaque, and that can shine the light and try to redesign systems in which this business is made out of in a very complex network. So yeah, coming from a country where freedoms are at stake and there's zero transparency, I felt like that's the connector of why I care about transparency in the industry that I'm in. And then as a whole, it ripples in many layers of from a personal life, from a community, and from the industry and the world.
It's fascinating to me how the life journeys of people, inform later on in their life their purpose and what they're really passionate about. And when you know that you don't have something, then you become a passionate advocate or activist for certain things that it matters. And sometimes when you're in the environment, when this is invisible, you don't even know that it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? So even in Europe, when we think about transparency and openness, we always think it's there, but actually it's not there 100%. So when some of my business clients come to me, and this is just a fun question, let's see how we're going to answer that, and ask me, okay, so we understand this transparency business, we have to get into it, we must do something about it. But they also ask me, what does this Z generation want from us? What is it that we can do in order to meet their expectations and the impact that they really want to see in the world? So if you were to summarize it for somebody who is listening, who is in a leadership position, or somebody who is a founder of the business, somebody who is thinking about it, somebody who is on the way towards transparency, and to answer that question, but really what they really want from us, what would you say?
One, the word that pops my mind fast is accountability. There's a lot of blah, 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 and the young people are tired of that because they have access to every single video that has been recorded by every single founder, CEO out there staying in conferences. Yes, by 2020, by 2030, by 2050. So there's a lot of promises there, and there has not been a good way of systematically recording what's happening, what KPIs are being met, and how are we keeping accountability of these promises. So what, we're going to reach 2030 and like just happened with 2020, like, oops, we didn't make it. Let's keep going. And then every year there's a new trend. Regenerative agriculture, circularity, AI, So it's like every year all these conferences have these themes and there's no accountability. So the young people can see this. They're very savvy. They're digital natives. They understand. And so, yeah, I would say accountability. And to achieve that, you can be as creative as you want within your company to even put yourself in the forefront of your organization and say, this is what we have done, but this is what we still have to do. This is what we failed. We actually don't know how to do it. Can we open this conversation? And there's a luxury brand that the CEO, like 5 years ago, said, we have divided our teams into the two generations, right? And we have given the same task to solve to each team, and then come together and see the similarities or the differences on perspectives on the same issue. How would you solve them? And that has given this brand a whole new perspective of how to attract a new generation that cares for similar things like the heads in the C-suite, but also how they can connect and create that trust, again, talking about trust with the new generation that ultimately these are their new consumers.
I love that. Digital natives demand us to be accountable to ourselves and to our promises. And I think that's one of the most important things to maintain trust, isn't it? When we say we will do something and then we don't do it, or we find excuse or justify our failures, try to cover it up, then we lose that trust. We lose that credibility that is necessary. And I think you're absolutely right, especially in the business world when it comes to the agendas and promises and what we communicate. It keeps on moving like you hit the can down the road, and somebody else will take it to somebody else. So what you're saying right now, we are at this precipice when we do need to take reins and we need to be 100% accountable and responsible. And if we cannot meet certain targets of transparency, then we also need to be humble enough and vulnerable enough to share, isn't it? And that will create more trust instead of covering it up and saying, yes, we're going to do it, but we're not doing it.
But it comes from a culture that we have been told to achieve, to be rewarded by doing the right thing, even with the grading system in schools. So we come from this systematic programming that we need to be the best. And if we're not, we should feel ashamed. And transparency allows you to be honest and open about trying to be better, but you don't have all the answers. And that's why I said at the start, like, we can't do everything alone. We have to come together. And if we know what we care about, and then you put all these people with different purposes and topics and goals, you can basically solve a lot of issues together by uniting this expertise, by bringing together the purpose of each individual that wants a better world that we have to all share.
Exactly. And I think that united purpose of us wanting the better world, us understanding that better world right now, it's co-creation, because it has been highlighted. The issues are clear, right? The issues, why do we need transparency? How do we need to preserve the earth? How do we need to be sustainable? What is the benefit of clear blockchain support? How the supply chain can work, to really open up with honesty and integrity, get to the source of all the products. So we know all the issues, right? We know what we need to resolve, but now we need to be united in this collective purpose and mission, which is we all want better world. And what is the better world that we want, right? And how to create that better world for everybody, using transparency as a key component in that creation.
Yeah, we connect with people when we feel like they are at eye level. Because if we see them above us, in a way, there's this sort of superiority complex that we think they're doing better than us, or the opposite. So if we find, and you mentioned blockchain, and that's something we have been focused on since 2017, bringing blockchain to fashion, because that is one of the tools that we can see how, by creating distributed ledgers, meaning connecting different silos and breaking that centralized authority, but actually sharing more information together, that is a system, is a model that can help create and build that level of trust, because it allows for a consensus as well to say, is this right, or is this wrong, or is this true, or is this false, without having one. And I think the it's not very comfortable talking about transparency or openness or honesty or authenticity. So it is not an easy topic for me to talk in some countries as well.
Oh, I can.
Yeah.
I know, but as I said, pioneering is always something that specific people can do. I admire you for being, advocate and spokesperson, and for carrying that torch of transparency, because it's not easy. It's much easier to do same old, same old. And I'm specifically now talking to the leaders in organizations. And we have a lot of leaders, mid-managers, first-line managers who are listening to our podcast week after week. So what Neliana is saying to you and to all of us, it's take the charge, don't be afraid to step up into discomfort, which is being transparent, being honest about the business to begin with, and your values and how we want to create a better world, but also throughout. And I think that transparency, like any honesty, like any truth liberates people. And I think that's the mind shift, right? Mindset shift, that sometimes we believe if we are not 100% honest and vulnerable, it's better. But actually, it's much better if we are. And this is what the Z generation, it's requesting: honesty, transparency, accountability, authenticity. We're coming close to to the recording of this podcast. Neliana, it's so beautiful to chat with you. So how would you like to leave audience with? What will be your call for action? Anything that you want to drop just to complete and inspire people to think about this topic further, and also to implement and apply what you've shared with us in their organization, in their corporations, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I imagine people listening to this podcast are founders or CEOs, or they are entrepreneurs, or maybe just students, or someone who, follows CNN and is listening to this. So what I would like to say is that no matter what you do and who you are, we are all citizens of this world, no matter where you're from. And we all have power for change. Anything that you would like to see in a better state. So my invitation is to think of every time you vote with your wallet, and whether it's creating a new project within your organization, allocating a budget, or going out to pick your favorite coffee in your local coffee shop, how can you choose better? How can you make that choice impactful? Every decision we make every day has a consequence in the future. It doesn't matter how tiny it is. It will have a ripple effect. It will have a consequence. And we have the responsibility for that to be a positive and also positive impact. So with that, I want to ask everyone next time they want to buy an item of clothing specifically, one, do I really need this? And then two, if I buy it, who am I voting for? What am I supporting by buying this item? And how can this have a positive impact in the future of not only my life, but also those around me and who made this? So that we can start feeling the interconnectedness that brings us all together. And also the second-hand market is growing exponentially. So yeah, I invite you also to think, could I buy this in a second-hand marketplace? No matter if I'm not talking only about clothing, but anything, a car, a computer, a phone, so that we can start creating this new economy that is really shaping the world. We have enough of everything out there right now. So
more like circular economy instead of just, right?
Yeah, I'm more advocate of infinite product cycles, life cycles. So yeah, I would like to see a world where materials become, again, raw materials to create new products and give a second, third life. So for me, infinite product life cycles is the future.
Becoming a conscious consumer, becoming a conscious citizen, using the money as the voting mechanism. So, when I buy, let's say anything, let's say this shirt I'm buying, I'm voting for something that I care about. And if this shirt is sustainable, if this shirt, I understand the origins, I know if it's recyclable or not, I understand where it has been made, from what fabrics, is it organic, ecological, not, and so on and so forth. I need to care about something, and through that care, do this conscious act of purchase instead of just being consumer who is just consuming, right, all the time.
Yeah, and even if it's not organic or it's not sustainable, know it and own it.
Know it and own it. I agree. Because sometimes, I can see that people, when I talk to people about this, and this is not just one generation, throughout generation, it's always like this thing, but is my action really has the impact on this big whole complex world, right? There is always this tendency of feeling that your act or your micro movement act doesn't really matter. And this is the justification that I see that people use to feel better about themselves, because they would say, this doesn't really matter. Who am I? Oh, I just bought this. It doesn't really matter. You know how many people buy different stuff? You know how many people don't recycle? You know how many people blah, blah, blah. It's always this external, it doesn't really matter. So what you're saying, it does.
The micro movement is extremely important, as you know, from our own life, to how can that be, and I love the background you've got behind you, because it makes it very visual. Every corner, every circle comes together. And if that's the ripple effect of everybody who doesn't do something because it won't make a change, it does. It will have a negative impact.
Exactly. So we invite you to reach through that narrative. My action doesn't matter, that don't matter. I'm small, screwing a big, to my action have this ripple effect, like when you toss the stone into the river and it kind of keeps on rippling. So everything that you do can become conscious, and you matter. Your choices, as Neliana beautifully said, your voting, using your money, it really, really matters, because that will direct certain policies, certain procedures. It will inspire the organization to take it more seriously. And we all are in collaboration creating the better world. So we're all in it together. This is not about judgment, right? You're doing things wrong and you're doing things right, Neliana? This is not about, this company, I hate them because they're not doing things as I want them to do. It's not about that. It's about everybody's growing and improving together.
Absolutely. Yes. And there's another topic as well. I just want to touch very briefly on like sustainable products being more expensive and not in the reach of everybody. And to a certain point, it's true, but it's also because we're so accustomed to buy the price ranges that we are used to from the 90s and early 2000s. And now comparing it to products that are sustainable and more expensive is because that's the true cost. And the business models need to change as well, because we live in a world where like the more you produce, the cheaper it is. And it's a new market to create better products. And we need that demand. So these products are sustainable, have the demand so that they can also be affordable and start balancing out that price range. So I think it is like an optical illusion as well. But the more demand there is for better products, and also for the information on how they are made, the business models will get into a balance where in the future it's gonna be hopefully the common denominator.
Exactly, and affordable for everybody. And I'm grateful that you touched this, because that's another common complaint, that, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Like organic food, like organic food is expensive for, common people, they really need to want it and budget for it in order to have it. Same thing with this, but with this balancing of the business models, with our voting, with our demand, it will balance itself and everybody will be able to have it. So Neliana, thank you so much for being advocate for transparency in business, especially within the fashion business. Thank you so much for being courageous enough to open up these conversations, to educate, to coach people in the industry, to do more. If you want to know more about Neliana, we're going to reference her website at the bottom of the description of this podcast, and also show you her Instagram handling as well. And as a special treat for everybody, we're also going to share Neliana's TED Talk of last year, Why Transparency in Fashion Matters to All of Us. Once again, Neliana, thank you so much for coming. For the people for listening, thank you so much for tuning into TNM Unplugged and Zoran Todorovic Interconnected Podcast. We're very grateful for your energy. We love your comments. Keep on sharing these videos to the people that you feel relevant, and keep on showing up and growing and elevating together with us week after week. So thank you so much, Neliana. Bye for now.
Thank you, Zoran. Thank you, everyone. Bye.